Hello and welcome to Endzone Now. God has been pulled from the classroom of dozens of state schools, according to an article in the Dominion Post this week. And it's true that more than 50 state schools have cancelled Bible-based education during school hours in the last 2 years. A survey by the Secular Education Network, which is campaigning against religion being taught in state schools, reveals only just over a third of schools still have some kind of religious instruction. So are Bible studies on the way out? Our guest on the programme today is the CEO of the Church's Education Commission, Simon Greening. Well, Simon, thank you for joining us. Are you worried by the apparent drop-off in the number of schools with religious education?
Not at all, Alan. I think the challenge for our organisation is really to remain relevant, for schools, this actual kind of campaign against us has actually allowed us as an organisation to really get into the innovation space and to continue to ensure that the programs that we do still have operating continue to add value to schools. So it's actually an opportunity for us to move into innovation, so it's good.
Tell us a bit about how it works, because the Bible in schools classes, you're not allowed during school hours, are you? But there are wrinkles around the system.
Sure. So basically, we have the Education Act here in New Zealand, and there's a clause in the Education Act that says that essentially a school can be closed technically for the purposes of RI, religious instruction, and we talk about religious education. So that's the Education Act 1964. And so the school's technically closed, and then we will have a team of volunteers from local churches come into that school, and in all the individual classes they present CRE, so Christian Religious Education.
It seems like a complicated way to do things. It seems like you're having to jump through hoops.
Well, it's just been the design of the system. Since 1896, RI has been allowed in New Zealand. So it all kicked off and started in Nelson. And ever since then, the legislation has really just followed through with that original scheme, this idea that the school could be technically closed. Of course, it's not closed. The reception is open and everything's open, but it's closed for the purposes of RI for that half hour. So we're only talking about half an hour a week in the school time.
That one Christchurch head teacher says there's no need for religious education. There are plenty of options in the local community. They didn't need the Bible to teach a values-based curriculum. How would you respond to him?
I think the truth is that we're now living in a global village. There's lots of religious views out there, lots of various belief systems. And what we're saying is that it's important for kids to grow up in a world where they're actually learning about the different religions of the world. Our organisation, the Church's Education Commission, offers the CRE program. But we're also saying to schools, if you want to look at getting other organisations in to teach other religions, we're not against that. That's in fact, the 1964 Act, I think when that came into Parliament was thinking in the 1960s that it would be Christian RI. But now we're saying, no, we actually believe that it's good if kids learn about religion. Religion should be in the public square. It should be discussed.
Because I think that's one of the arguments, isn't it? Is that people are saying, why should it be Christians? Why shouldn't it be Islam or Buddhists or Jedi?
Yes, that's right. And I think that's a really good point. And so that's why we're saying to schools, on other days or on the same day, you could actually have other groups come in and provide this program. There's a school here in Yulin, for example, that has a Muslim group. There's a school in Panmure that has Baha'i on another day, and then they have the CRE on another day. And there was once a school that actually had Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism and Christianity through the CRE program. So a range of different religious providers, if you like. The challenges for those kind of other religious groups is they are not sometimes set up very well to kind of carry it over the long haul. But we say to schools, and this is the point, under the Education Act, the school boards decide whether they'll offer the RE program, and if they do offer the RE program, they choose which religion, if you like, to focus on.
So they're not being forced to do this
No, and that's why when Peter Harrison and the guys who head up the Secular Education Network, they went down to Parliament, went to the Select Committee, and put in their case for why, when this amendment's going through in the Education Act, they put a case forward saying, we believe that you should now kind of get rid of these clauses. I actually think the law strikes a good balance as it stands, because it's a decentralised model. It goes to school boards in consultation with the school community to decide whether they want CRE in their school, and I think that's a good model because it strikes a good balance.
One of the things that they talk about in their submission to the Education Amendment Bill, they say the children who opt out of religious classes are forced to clean dishes in the staff room or pick up litter. So one of their arguments is that it's an all or nothing, and if you choose to opt out, then you're effectively punished.
So yeah, and I think our response would be that there is just no evidence to substantiate that point. I think the second point is I'm a CRE teacher myself. Even though I head up the organisation, I believe it's important to be involved at the grassroots. I teach at a school out in Howick every week, and there is no issue with the 2 kids that opt out of my class. Of a class of 19, only 2 kids opt out, and they opt out before I even get there. They go into the library and they have the state school teachers operate a program for them, and then they return when the bell goes to finish the lesson. They return, and so the key is we're saying no, actually, kids that are opted out should be treated with sensitivity and respect, and that's important. So that particular example is one particular parent who's a member of that organisation. So we're not talking about a parent who is an independent, and I think that's important to note.
Yeah. One of the points that they make in their submission is that parents sometimes only find out that children are taking the classes after they've taken them. They don't get an option to opt out beforehand. They're sort of just dropped in it.
Yes, and so what we did is last year we developed a simple brochure. What is Christian religious education? It's an FAQ guide for parents, and we've distributed over 20,000 of those, and they now go into enrolment packs all over schools all over New Zealand, and that is really good upfront information. And it's clear in that FAQ guide, we tell parents we will be talking about Jesus in the classroom, we'll be talking about the Bible in the classroom, we'll be talking about God, but we're doing it from the perspective of, this is what we're saying to kids, we're talking about what Christians believe, what are the core Christian beliefs, and what are the core kind of Christian values.
And I guess that's the other question that people would worry about is, are you proselytizing? Are you in there to convert the kids that you're teaching?
We have a code of expectations for CRE teachers, and the code clearly spells out that we're there to educate and not to evangelise, and I think that's important. I have stood down CRE teachers when we found out evangelism has been happening in my time, 18 months as the CEO.
But that must be really hard for you as a Christian.
It is difficult as a Christian, but I also believe that we should be people of integrity, and if we say we're going into a school to do one thing, we should be going and doing that and not another. And so if we find out that's happening, we'll go and investigate, and I will move to stand people down. Because what we always have to think is that we've got this great opportunity. We want to keep the doors open, and therefore acting with integrity, even just from a Christian perspective, is important. But all the more if we want to keep the doors open in schools on a long-term setting.
How would you answer the accusation that you were... just the fact that you're being there and you're using the Bible is in itself an act of evangelism, because there are people who have become Christians just by reading the Bible. So it's a very powerful work of literature.
It is a powerful work of literature, I agree, Alan. But at the same time, I think it's all about the language we use in the classrooms. We're saying Christians believe is the language we're using. Look, I had Radio New Zealand come into my classroom. I then also had the Sunday Star Times journalists in there. And I was talking about John chapter 13, washing the disciples' feet one time. Another time I was talking about the woman at the well, the story out of John chapter 4. And both times we're sensitive about how we talk about those stories and how to make those stories relevant to those kids. And we're always looking at language and how we're using the language in the classroom to make sure that we're not crossing the very fine line between evangelism and education.
How do you get around the idea that religion can be divisive. I mean, you talk about being sensitive to people, but one of the things they point out in their submission is that if you look at the great conflicts, the Northern Ireland Troubles, the Middle East, almost anywhere, Sunni and Shia Muslims, it's religion that is the base of that conflict. Their argument is if you take religion out altogether, then you're going to have a more harmonious society.
I guess our response would be, it's not religion, in my mind, that causes the conflict. It's the misunderstandings we have of each other's religion. And then therefore we could turn the argument around and say, well, shouldn't we be teaching kids about the various religions of the world? And when we're growing up now in this global village, and as kids move on to go into business in Singapore and Malaysia and the Asia Pacific realm and things, learning about and going into various countries around the world in business, learning about other religious beliefs is actually important if we're going to actually be able to understand each other. And I think that's important.
The number of schools that are taking Bible in schools or similar programs has dropped. I mean, are you able to reverse that trend, do you think?
Yes, we are reversing that trend by what we've developed recently is a new program called Champions, which is a lunchtime program. We're also operating now breakfast clubs, and we're also looking at after-school care. So what we're saying is Bible in schools is the kind of big idea, but we can keep the Bible in the school in all sorts of different ways, still educating kids about Christian beliefs and values, but we're saying now the delivery might have to change, the style of the program might have to change, and most importantly, we're actually connecting the Bible with values, and in particular schools have values, and what we're trying to do now is massage our curriculum to make sure that it's flexible and adaptable and ties in with the values of the school, and it kind of upholds the values of the school.
But one of the schools says that they can get that values teaching. There are lots of options outside. Why do we need to have it in school?
Yes, and I guess, so that's the challenge. Because the model is decentralised, we've got to actually convince every school board that this program adds value. And ultimately they go off to the school community and consult, have a survey, bring it back, have a look at it and decide. Our goal was to make sure that our program actually continues to add value. And I think this whole challenge from the Secular Education Network has allowed us the opportunity as an organisation that's been in New Zealand for over 100 years to now innovate and to be relevant going forward.
So if you were talking to a government committee right now, instead of me,
yes,
what would you say to them, bearing in mind you know what the submission has been from the rationalists? What would be your argument to say, look, let's leave the status quo?
Well, I think the first question is, does religion have a place in the state school system? Teaching of religion, any religion. And I think, yes, it does, because I think we've got to get past that first hurdle. The Secular Education Network comes out of the New Zealand Humanist and Rationalist Association. So their worldview from the get-go is that religion doesn't have a place in society. Any religion, not just Christianity. So our kind of view is, no, actually religion has a place in society. And so I'd be saying to, say, a government select committee, yes, religion has a place in society, and then you have to move to the next point and say that right now the Education Act allows a school to decide which type of religion they would offer. And we have always said that any group could come into a school, any religious group, and offer a program, and we just are an organisation that offers a Christian RE program. So right now the law strikes a good balance. And I was previously a lawyer before I took on this role, and I think that right now, when you look at the Bill of Rights and you look at the Education Act, I think it's hard sometimes to reconcile the freedom of religion provisions in that act. But it's important, if you look at the Bill of Rights, the freedom of religion provision in there says that we should be free in society, in this free and democratic society, to express our religious views. But in doing so, we're obviously respecting the views that others have. And I think right now the Education Act actually is consistent with that Bill of Rights provision, even though the SEN group would disagree with that.
Simon, thank you very much indeed for your time. Thanks a lot.
No problem. Thanks.
Well, that's all we've time for this week. If you have a comment on what you've heard, you can email us at enzonow, all one word, at shinetv.co.nz. Thanks to everyone who mailed us last week. We do read all your comments. So don't forget to catch this week's edition of our sister programme, Enzo Focus, this week featuring the young Kiwi singing sensation Jessie Hillel. I'll be talking to one of the aid workers on the ground in tornado-hit Oklahoma City, and we'll meet the Kiwi peacekeepers on the Sinai Peninsula. But for now, from all of us on the Enzo Now team, ka kite anō.